So, hello and welcome to our presentation about digital accessibility, or how we put it, accessibility as a superpower. And first things first, we would like to introduce ourselves briefly. My name is Anna. I'm an associate creative director working at IBM iX in Berlin. I'm working as a UI designer for 10 years now, and I'm specialized on clients from the public sector, like ministries, universities. And this means that the topic of digital accessibility is with me for many years now and is an essential part of my work. I hand over to Christiane.
Yes, hello from me, and it's the same for me. I also work in the public cluster, mainly at IBM iX Berlin, and I'm a content designer, which means I mainly write texts and review texts for websites and apps and some social media. And of course, I'm trying to make my content as accessible as possible. Also, just a small note, Anna, there's a pop-up saying you're sharing your screen. Can you get rid of that?
Yeah, wait. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Before we start with our presentation, we first of all would like to know what is your understanding of accessibility. So could you maybe just leave a comment in the official chat? Would be really nice if you just write down what comes to your mind when you think about accessibility. What is your understanding of the term? You don't
yes,
have
and
to
also, if you have special questions, things you want to know, you can always write them in the chat, and we will try to answer them later in the Q&A.
So, Christiane, you have to tell me if something arrives, as I, in this moment, can't have a look at the chat.
I can't see anything just yet. We also don't know how many people joined us. It's all quite a black box. But yeah, you don't have to write anything. We just hope you're listening.
Okay. Yes. Okay, then I jump to one possible definition, and we just have a quick look what the World Wide Web Consortium says about web accessibility. They say that web accessibility means that people with disabilities can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the web, and that they can contribute to the web. So what you can find here is that we talk about every user, no matter of individual backgrounds or conditions. We talk about autonomous interaction without any assistance, and joy of use for everybody. Long story short, when you want to do it the accessible way, identify possible barriers and remove them, focus on ease of use, keep it simple, and keep in mind that everyone should in the end have equal access and that everyone should have a joyful experience. So who do we basically design for when we talk about accessibility?
Yes, and here we brought you some visuals and statistics. These are 4 groups of people with disabilities we identified especially for digital products. Group number 1 are people with impaired vision, for example, blindness, color blindness, myopia, or cataracts. Group number 2 are people with deafness or impaired hearing, such as hardness of hearing, especially for elderly people. Group number 3 are people with motor difficulties. That could be rheumatism, wheelchair users, paraplegia, or arthritis. And the 4th group we identified are cognitive impairments or learning disabilities, for example, autism, dyslexia, or anxiety disorders. These are all very important to keep in mind when we design digital products and want to make them accessible. Then next up, there's some statistics, and just a hint, clients love statistics, so it's really good to know these things in order to place accessibility as an important topic for your projects. So 15% of the world's population live with some form of disability. These are 1 billion people. 94%, so the majority of all disabilities, are acquired in the course of a lifetime and they don't exist from birth. 44% of people with severe disabilities are between 55 and 75 years old. That means the older you get, the higher the risk of actually also getting a disability. And it might just be impaired hearing, or maybe you need glasses because you can't see correctly when you get older. And the prognosis is by 2030, the number of people in the world aged 60 plus years is predicted to grow by 56%, so by more than half, from 901 million to 1.4 billion, which means we're all growing older thanks to modern medicine and technology, and therefore we're also all at risk to get a disability in the course of our lifetime. So what does that mean? Who actually benefits from accessibility? Well, as you just heard, there are the permanent disabilities, such as blindness or deafness. These people definitely benefit. But then there are also temporary disabilities. For example, if you have an arm injury and you can't use your phone like you used to, or you have an ear infection and you can't hear like you used to, or you have a cold like me. That's also really annoying. I can't hear 100%, which is really weird. And surprisingly, there's a third group that are the situational disabilities. For example, if you're a parent and you're carrying your child, or if you're just a traveler carrying heavy luggage, or if you're just on your way to work, sitting in a loud environment on the train and you are trying to watch a video on your phone, but you can't because it's too loud, you will for sure appreciate the subtitles. So actually, everybody benefits in one or the other situation.
Yeah, and we all can come into situations where we get disabled, basically.
Yes, definitely.
So what we want to tell you is that even if you maybe planned and build a product, a service for a very small, very specific user group, it most likely will turn out to benefit many other users as well that you originally didn't have in mind. So you will reach many more users than you first expected, which is great. We now equipped you with very valid, good arguments for accessibility, but we want to answer the following question now in a more empathetic way. So why should we make accessible digital products? Of course, because it is simply the right thing to do, as Steve Krug put it, because the one argument for accessibility is how extraordinarily better it makes some people's lives. And hey, that's really a reason to simply do it. The impact is huge because we already showed you now some facts. We can reach people in all their diversity, and that means people of different generations and age groups, people with various cultural backgrounds and languages. We reach diverse genders. We reach people from multiple social backgrounds, and of course also people with individual health conditions. So when we do it the accessible way, we embrace diversity and we show that we care about diversity. Turn the narrative around. We can promote a change of perspective and move away from making the disability a problem and move towards enablement. Maybe you remember in the old days, the narrative looked like this. A person is disabled, and that's why this person with this disability has to figure out how to solve the problems he or she is facing and how to interact with the existing environment, how to integrate into the existing environment. Nowadays, fortunately, we say that a person gets disabled. And by saying so, it means that we as a society as a whole take responsibility to remove possible barriers and to create an environment that is accessible for all. And what I want to tell you here is that we as designers, as developers as well, have a responsibility, should also see that we have this responsibility, and our work, our daily work can really make a change and can make the world a better place for many, many people. So when you implement accessibility in your project, it's a win-win-win-win situation because, as we pointed out, you expand your target group. You will save costs if you include accessibility right from the start and not in the end of the project. It will always get more expensive. You will have positive side effects for search engine optimization, and you automatically create clean code, which is great. And all that together means that you strengthen a brand and you show that your client, that you all embrace diversity. So you create lots of positive side effects that you can, simply can use. Now, from theory to praxis, how can we implement accessibility in our work?
Yes, that's a good question. And first things first, we need a commitment from you, from your team, and from your client. So you need to point out that accessibility is everyone's responsibility on the team. Every profession needs to be aware that they're responsible. Then you need to raise awareness and bring everyone up to the same level of knowledge. And we'll share an example in a minute of how you can actually do that, kind of material to use for that. And it's really important to integrate accessibility into your project's roadmap in order to think of it right from the start and reserve proper timing and not just try to squeeze it in when you remember to, oh, oops, we need an accessible product. What do we do right at the end when it's almost finished? That won't work well. It's gonna take way longer. Therefore, it will be more expensive, and yeah, it's not gonna be a good result. We don't recommend it.
Then, and this is mostly the painful part for most creatives, be aware of guidelines and regulations. I know at the beginning it's hard because you have all those regulations and they differ from country to country, and maybe you're confused and don't know where to start. But I can assure you that those regulations can become your friend because they give recommendations for very clear actions to take. And in all this jungle of regulations, our tip is to stick to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, the WCAG, which is the international standard consisting of 78 success criteria. And we figured out that most other regulations, national regulations like the EN norm or in Germany, it's the BITV, they mostly are structured in a similar or even in the same way. So if you just stick to the WCAG throughout your whole project, then you can't do it the wrong way. You will always get it right. Maybe a little pro tip that we also recently did in some projects: take those rules and create checklists for each profession. So of course it's like a day work that you have to do, but it really helps if you identify which rules are relevant for project management, for content strategy, for UX and UI design, front end, back end, and also the editorial department, because then everyone in the team knows exactly what to do.
Yes, and also you should include accessibility into the concept of your project by working with diverse users. So I hope you know what personas are. There was also a talk on accessible personas or diverse personas earlier today. So personas are like prototype users, and you can make accessibility a part of this process or diversity by creating prototype users that deviate from the perfect norm. So choose to incorporate users with slight disabilities or elderly users as your personas. And here we have some examples from the website Cards for Humanity and Gov UK. So the UK government also has some really cool personas on their websites, and you can just basically take inspiration and then fine-tune them according to your needs and according to your target group.
When it comes to accessible design, this is basically a no-brainer because it's good for every project, no matter if it should be accessible or not. Keep it simple, keep it spacious and structured. So what you can see here is like the old and new website of the Federal Office of Civil Protection in Germany, where we did the relaunch last year. And what we simply did is working with white space, structuring the information with subheadings, with lists, including imagery into the website, and just don't make it too cluttery, presenting simple content, not too much content, so that everything stays really snackable, digestible, and is easy to understand for every user.
Yeah, and use the correct headline and subline order. Sorry, I was just adding.
Thank you. A classic as well is work with high color contrast when you do a good, accessible design. And when it comes to color contrast, don't just rely on your personal perception, but really work with tools that you can find for free online and really measure the color contrast of foreground and background color, because this is the only safe way that you can be sure that your designs will be crisp and clear to see for everyone.
Yes, and it's also important from a content point of view to write meaningful titles and descriptive links, because there are going to be many screen reader users. So, for example, blind users, and they use screen reader software that just reads everything that's on the page to them. So if you have a lot of links that say here, or click here, or learn more, and that's your link text, these people are not going to know where the link takes them. So always make sure to use descriptive words in order for the users to know where you lead them, and also use descriptive titles for everything. Also keep it short and simple, preferably. And also for the screen reader users, regarding images, of course, they probably can't see pictures like we do. So a blind person would most likely just see the title of the picture or the name of the picture, which is most often, unfortunately, a weird combination of letters and numbers, as in this example. And it's not a good way to name your picture at all. And preferably, of course, we'd like a text alternative so the screen reader can read to the users what they can see in the picture. For example, like the example we gave here. And you can choose in how much detail you want to go describing the picture, depending on the context of the picture and what is emphasized in the text surrounding the picture.
So these have been just some few tips that are quite basic. And as we just have a small amount of time, we of course can't present you the whole list of things to do. But what we wanted to tell you is that most things are quite clear and easy to understand for us. And it's quite easy to understand why we should do it this way and not in another way. So our last tip that we want to give you is be patient and just keep learning. What you can see here on blue is a comment from a front-end developer that came to me last week when we were discussing about hover and focus effects. And in the end, he told me, I know that the work that you have done, that this is accessibility compliant, but still it won't pass our internal review board and you have to redo it in another way. So despite all rules and despite all regulations that we can stick to, there is still room for interpretation. Be aware of that. This is on the one hand due to the fact that also inside those regulations, there are different conformity levels. In the WCAG, you find rules with A, AA, and AAA conformity. So there is already a little room for interpretation. And then, of course, it depends also on individual focuses of the auditors that in the end are testing your website or app. So keep cool, breathe deeply, accept that there is friction on the topic, and yeah, just go on, learn about it, and yeah, stick to it.